He's credited with transforming the bank from a low margin bank to a thriving and very profitable institution. Prior to working at Diamond Bank, he was executive director at First Bank, which is West Africa's largest banking institution. And he has a variety of professional and experiences in the corporate world, as well as in top institutions like HBS, Wharton, and of course, Columbia Business School. So yes, he is one of us. So I don't know about you, but I'm going to be taking a lot of notes because he has a lot to share. And as a matter of fact, I think Columbia Business School should probably look at having a case study about the transformation of Diamond Bank. So anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce our closing keynote, Dr. Alex Otti.
Right. Thank you very much, Asahan. The problem with introductions like this is that they set you on a high jump, and the expectations will be much more than sometimes you can probably deliver. So let me warn you that you may not get all what he said. I'll try and talk a little bit about Diamond Bank. But I also like to talk about a few other things that are happening in Nigeria and Africa generally, and probably try and encourage us. Because sometimes when you've stayed very long outside the shores of your own land, you tend to begin to look at your land as a foreign land. A whole lot of things are happening in Africa, and there's no better time than now, because Africa is looking for skills. Africa is looking for people like you to come back and contribute your own quota. And Africa is looking for not just Africans, but those who like Africa, so that you're not an African doesn't zone you out of Africa. If you look at the numbers that have been shared, and I'm sure from yesterday, you will find that there's nowhere else in the world witnessing the kind of growth that Africa is witnessing. The Federal Office of Statistics in Nigeria just released the numbers, I believe, 2 days ago, to the effect that in the last quarter of last year, Nigeria grew by about 7% GDP growth. And this is in an era where countries are actually declining. Now you may ask, what does it mean to the average Nigerian? And it's the kind of question that I always like to ask. Because growing up, I used to like statistics. But I also stumbled on a book, I don't know if any of you have seen it, titled How to Lie with Statistics. So I started looking at statistics from another point of view. To say, when you have 7% GDP growth in Nigeria, what does it mean to the ordinary man on the street? Doesn't mean a whole lot. If we cannot find jobs, doesn't mean a whole lot. If inflation is still high, doesn't mean a whole lot. If he has to rely on generators to do the little thing that he needs to do, it doesn't mean anything if the man that has ideas cannot translate those ideas into reality because he is facing infrastructural challenges. Even if he does, he is unable to move his products to where they are needed because there are no roads, because the rails are not working, because the airports are not safe, So those are the kind of statistics that I'd like to be looking at, not necessarily GDP growth. But if you're interested in GDP growth, there's a lot of good stories coming out of Africa. But rather than looking at the negative side of it, I like to look at the opportunities. So, and if Nigeria is producing some 4,000 megawatts of electricity at the moment, and the installed capacity is 10 or 12 or 20, and we are told that if we need to give every 160 million Nigerian 24-hour supply of light, that we should be looking at numbers like 50,000 megawatts. So what does it mean for me? It means there's great opportunity as a banker. It means I can invest in power. It means you can invest in power. It means we can do so much to change lives in Nigeria. And if I say that the rail system, I believe that was built in the 50s by the Germans and I believe the Indians, have completely disappeared. It also means that I can link the southern part of Nigeria to the northern part of Nigeria and western part of Nigeria and have production begin to happen once again. So it means I can put money in there. It also means that if the roads that were built in the 70s are the ones that we have today, then we can also invest money and do a lot of goods. Now, talking statistics, I also found out that we have built up a war chest, and I'm talking with specific reference to Nigeria. We built up a war chest of some $47 billion in reserves, in foreign reserves. That's an awful large number of dollars to keep elsewhere. And I do know that a chunk of that money is with JP Morgan Chase. And while I do not have problems with JP Morgan Chase, I do think that some of that money can also be brought back home. So rather than asking this in JP Morgan Chase to lend me money, I can use my own money to do my own business. So these are the kind of thinking that we believe is new, and some people may not like it, but that's the way to go. I mean, simply put, if I have $50 billion in Nigeria today, I can do a whole lot with it. And what is the essence of the foreign reserve that we are building up? And I'm sure all of you know, is how many weeks of import it can cover. So, and if you move your attention from covering imports to just building up foreign reserve for the sake of building up foreign reserve, then you've lost it, you missed the point. So, and if I say 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 1 month, maybe 3 months of import, should be about $20 billion, maybe $10 billion, then I can use a large chunk of my $47 billion to do a whole lot for Nigeria, create jobs, give impetus to the micro, small, and medium scale enterprises, get people out of the unemployment lines, and do a whole lot for the country. That's about it. Now let's go back to what happened from 2007 to 2009 and probably to 2011 when I assumed the position of CEO of Diamond. The global economic crisis, which started somewhere around here, I'm sure we're all very familiar with the subprime loans and all. So that crisis, initially when it happened, a few people thought that countries in Africa were isolated. And the simple reason was that we were not doing enough trade, we were not doing so much, we are so endogenous, and it wasn't going to affect us. A few of us warned that the world has become a global village. And I believe, I remember having an argument with the then Central Bank of Nigeria governor, who you call here Federal Reserve President, like Benanke, I'm sure we know him. Okay. So we had an argument, and I said, I studied economics right with my first degree, and I felt that there was no way that the crisis that started in the US, went to Europe, hit some parts of Asia, will not come close to Nigeria. Just think of the simple thing we do. We are still an import-dependent economy, so you have to open letters of credit, and if the man that is giving you credit has a problem, he needs to solve his problem first before giving you credit. And it was simple logic. But I was told that we had built such a war chest in terms of capitalization of banks that even if anything happened, it wasn't going to affect the economy so seriously. Maybe they were right, because the banks were very well capitalized. But time has shown that it's not exactly correct. So what happened? 2007 went by, 2008, by March 2008, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the All Share Index, dropped from some 66,000 points to less than 20,000. Global fund managers were dumping shares. Share prices went down. Market capitalization by that same March 2008 was in the region of $87 billion. 1 month after April 2008, it dropped to $19 billion. So, and it was like hell was let loose. Banks started losing money. Banks that had extended loans, margin loans, now found that the margins that they had collected had disappeared. So there was a big problem. As if that was not enough, July 2008, oil prices, and I'm sure you know, Nigeria is an oil exporting country, and I think we're the 5th largest producer of oil. Oil prices went down from $142 per barrel in July 2008 to an all-time low of $42 per barrel by January 2009. So it was a big problem. The banks, some of them were giving an impression that everything was okay, but we knew things were not okay. June 2009, a former bank CEO, actually my CEO then, in First Bank, and I believe he's been here, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, was appointed the central bank governor. He was a practitioner, he knew all the tricks, he knew all the truth, he also knew all the lies. So by the time he took over, he ordered a special audit of all the banks. 8 banks were taken over by central bank, and out of the 8 banks, at least 4 of them were the very big, healthy important banks. What was the problem? They had suffered massive non-performing loans that had wiped off their capital. They had infringed on a whole lot of things, most importantly, corporate governance. Capital adequacy ratios were at their lowest ebb. All the infractions that you could think of. So, because central bank at that time didn't want any bank failures, so they took over the banks. And the rest is now history. Now, Diamond Bank was one of the banks that survived that test, but not without its own catches too. So one thing led to the other. Central Bank set up the Asset Management Company of Nigeria to resolve the non-performing loan issue, because it was such a big issue. I think at last count, over 4.3 trillion naira if you want to convert that to dollar, use 1 naira 50 kobo to the dollar. 150 naira to the dollar. Okay, so over 4.3 trillion naira have been taken over by the Asset Management Company of Nigeria. Of course, Diamond Bank also had a chunk of their loans taken over. The bank has started losing market share. The bank had also started facing very low staff morale. So exactly March 1, 2011, I resumed as the new CEO of Diamond Bank. Now, some of the things I found were not very, very good. I was very concerned. But I was determined to deal with the issues. So the first thing I did as I joined was to sit with my people to say we must tell ourselves the truth. How much of our loan book is good and how much of it is bad? Now what we need to do is to provide for the bad loans as much as we could, but I think that was very important. So it took a lot of fight. You know how it is. When you stay in a place for too long, you tend to lose sight of the temperature of the place. So as we are here now, it may be hot, it may be cold, but you need to move from here to know whether this place is hot or cold, particularly if you've been here for a very long time. So that was the first fight. How to convince the people who had been there that they were sitting on very huge bad loan portfolio. At some point, I had to actually use the big stick to say, we must do this. And I believe in 2011, when we decided that we were going to write down all those bad loans, we wrote down some $250 million in bad loans. For a small bank, that was huge. The size of the bank in 2010 was about $4.5 billion. So, and writing off $250 million was a big deal, but I thought we should do that. And because we did that, the bank shrunk to about $3.8 billion. And as of that year, we posted a pre-tax loss of about $145 million. But I thought it was important that we did that. The other thing that we also did was to look at our risk management function, and I'm sure a lot of people understand what I mean by that. That is where you have a big problem with banks. And if you're a CEO that doesn't want to do things in a transparent manner, then you weaken your risk management function. But what I did was to upgrade that function to a directorate and hired an executive director to take charge of that directorate. Of course, to do that, I had to fire the person that was there before them. And of course, in this kind of role, you shouldn't be afraid to fire. You shouldn't also be afraid to hire when the need arises. And that's what we did. It was difficult, but we did it. So we cleaned up the place, got a new chief risk officer, and went through the board to ensure that this chief risk officer was independent. Independent to the extent that we can disagree, we can fight, but we will always agree. And I gave so much power to the chief risk officer to such an extent that if she said no to a credit, it would be difficult to approve it. And the kind of powers I gave myself was such that if all my executive members, and I had about 5 or 6 of them, executive directors and of course the chief risk officer, if everybody said yes, I gave myself the powers to say no. But if everybody said no, I didn't have powers to say yes. So we ran that kind of institution, and that's the kind of institution we're running up to today. So any credit that passes through these hurdles that we had set must be a good credit. And the next thing that we needed to do was also, and since I talked about firing people, I need to conclude on that to say we had a fantastic team. We had people who had been there, but a lot of them had been there for too long. A lot of them had lost confidence. A lot of them didn't belong anymore. So we set clear rules and criteria with which we determined who will stay, particularly at the very senior level, and who will not. And it was very, very clear to everybody. And fast track to 2012, June, we had to, first of all, we did an exercise in April 2011, which saw about 15 very senior people go. Now, that exercise was based on criteria that had been set by my predecessors, but they stopped short at implementing it. And when I came and I saw it, I implemented it. But I thought that going forward, that I needed to set clear rules, which was understood by everybody. And so you could sit in your office and measure yourself and write your appraisal, know whether you're doing well or not, based on agreed criteria. So that happened. And June 2012, that was last year, we implemented that for the first time. And that saw about 120 people leaving the organization. We ensured that they didn't leave very angry, so we paid them off. Very expensive thing to do, but we did that. And then we now opened up the place to get in very, very good people. And before we did that, we also improved on the pay, because I talked about very low staff morale. Pay is important, but the environment is more important. So we try to maintain an open and transparent system where people could air their views, where people could be heard. We must not agree with you, but we must hear you out. And that culture permeated in the system. And a whole lot of people are looking at Diamond Bank today as a place to work. We are told that we are the best paying bank in Nigeria. I haven't done the comparisons, but that's what I hear. And I think that it's also borne by the fact that every day people are knocking on our doors and they want to live where they are to join us. So we created an environment that was open, transparent. People will know if you're not doing well, you know you're not doing well. Nobody will even tell. Okay, so, and I think that worked. Now, I want to dwell so much on people because you really cannot achieve anything if you don't have the right people. So, in 2011, we told ourselves that there were very clear deliverables for us. There were things that we were going to do. So we locked ourselves in the room. There were a lot of us, and this happened weeks. It took several weeks. We are looking at Diamond Bank. Look at from where we are coming. The bank that was a technologically driven bank, the bank that was an innovation-centered bank, and had lost everything in a couple of years, 6 years thereabout. So we said we needed to do something. So the strategy session started. And we fought, we told each other the truth. I started with myself and I said, nobody calls me CEO, I'm Alex Otti. So if you want to address me as Alex. So and I removed all the gap from all my people. So people were very free to speak. And you'll be amazed at the kind of ideas, the kind of suggestions, the kind of things that came from people at the shop floor. People spoke openly, and that's actually where we got all the ideas from. So the credit, even though I must also warn that it's still early days because it's just 2 years, but the credit to the success that we have recorded today goes to our people. because they are the people that came with the idea. And we decided after several weeks that our new strategy was going to be codenamed Reclaiming the Diamond. Because we were coming from somewhere and we thought we should reclaim the diamond. And we gave ourselves clear targets and deliverables. When that was done, then we had a 3-day retreat at the board level. And it was a difficult thing selling to the board the kind of things we wanted to do. Some of them thought it was crazy. You can't be coming from nowhere and you want to be here. Do you want to kill the man in front of you or something? But I said, we can do it. And we all agreed. The board said, okay, if that's what you want to do, please go ahead. And then I took one more thing and I said, I must get a free hand to do these things that I like to do. And I got it. And we all went back. So the next thing was, who was going to head the department that would be in charge of people, the human capital department. So, and if you're a leader in this room, or you're an intending leader, pay a lot of attention to who you are head of human capital, head of human resources, personnel, whatever you call it. The head of that group is so important. There was a so-called professional that was there. And I had a big problem with her. And at some point, we thought we needed to make a change in that area. So we let her go. So we were looking for the head of human capital from all over the world. We even went to the economists and advertised without putting her name anyway. And all the interviews we conducted, we really didn't find the right person. One day, we were at the strategy session, and one of the old hands handling small and medium-scale enterprises just made a comment, and I said, what a minute, I found my head of human capital in the room. Spent about 18 years in the bank, so it's not like somebody coming from the moon. And I consulted with my colleagues. Everybody was like, oh yeah, why didn't we think about this? So then we made that appointment. And things changed. Because if you have a hold, a handle on your people, then you have a handle on your business. And some of the things that used to happen in the past that we knew, we tried to correct them. There were no longer sacred cows. Where you came from didn't matter. What was important